There's a difference between explaining something and defending yourself. One is rooted in clarity, the other in fear. When you defend yourself, you give power to the person questioning you. You tell them, your opinion of me is more important than my own truth. The most confident people don't waste time defending every move. They let their track record and presence do the talking. Defensiveness feeds doubt because the very act of rushing in to explain yourself signals to others that something might be wrong. Even if nothing actually is, people read body language and tone faster than they process your words, so when you tense up, speak quickly, or pile on details, their minds start to fill in the blanks with suspicion. It's a subtle psychological trigger. If you're truly confident in your position, why are you working so hard to prove it? The harder you push, the more it can look like you're trying to cover a gap or hide something. Even if you have the best intentions, over-explaining can make you appear insecure, and insecurity often gets mistaken for dishonesty. That's why in many cases, the moment you start defending yourself, you accidentally shift the focus from the actual facts to your emotional reaction. People stop listening to what you're saying and start paying attention to how you're saying it, and their judgment becomes about your behavior rather than the truth of the situation. When that happens, you've already lost control of the narrative because you've given them more fuel to question you. Facts over feelings means that the strongest position you can take is one grounded in reality, not in the emotion of trying to be believed. When you let the truth stand without over-decorating it, you give people something solid to process rather than something clouded by your urgency to be understood. The more you let your emotions steer the conversation, the more the focus drifts away from what actually happened and lands on how passionately you're trying to convince them. That passion can be misread as desperation, and desperation is often confused with guilt. Facts don't need to be dressed up or padded with excessive explanations. They're self-sustaining, and when you allow them to sit on their own, you signal that you're not afraid of them being examined. By contrast, when you attach too much feeling to your delivery, you risk creating noise around the message, making it harder for others to separate the truth from your emotional state. People are far more likely to trust a calm, clear statement than a long-winded defense filled with urgency and personal justification, because calmness suggests certainty while agitation suggests doubt. Silence is power because it forces the other person to sit with their own words without the relief of your reaction. When you respond immediately, you give them a direction to follow. You let them know which buttons to press, which angles to exploit, and how much control they have over your emotions. But when you say nothing, you take away their roadmap. People often speak to provoke, to get a rise, or to pull you into a back and forth where they can keep the spotlight on their accusation. Silence denies them that stage. It creates discomfort, and in that discomfort, many will start to second-guess themselves or even backpedal. In a world where everyone rushes to fill the air, quietness stands out. It makes people wonder what you're thinking. Whether you're confident enough to not need to respond, or whether you simply don't consider their comment worth your time. And that uncertainty can be more impactful than any carefully crafted defense you could give, because it leaves the weight of the conversation entirely on their side, forcing them to either justify themselves further or let the matter drop. Clarify, don't justify means you address the accuracy of information without stepping into the trap of proving your worth or innocence. When someone challenges you, it's easy to slide into long explanations about why you did something, what you were thinking, or how they misunderstood you. But that's the doorway to defensiveness. Clarification is sharper and cleaner. It simply corrects the record and leaves it there. It's the difference between saying, that's not true, and launching into a 10-minute story about why it's not true. The first approach keeps you in control of the conversation. The second hands the control over to the other person by letting them dictate the terms. Justification often sounds like you're asking for permission to be right, as though their approval is the final stamp of truth. Clarification, on the other hand, doesn't seek permission. It states reality as it is. It's a subtle shift, but it completely changes the dynamic because you're not playing their game. You're simply drawing a line between what's real and what's imagined and then refusing to step past it. Control the frame is about deciding how the conversation is going to be viewed instead of letting someone else set the perspective for you. When another person makes an accusation or frames you in a certain way, they're essentially building the stage, the lighting, and the script for how you're supposed to respond. If you step directly into that frame, you're already playing the part they've written for you, and it's almost always the role of the accused. But when you control the frame, you refuse to start from their premise. You can redirect the conversation to the bigger picture, the actual facts, or even to a question that forces them to reveal their own intentions. By not reacting exactly how they expect, you disrupt their control and make them work harder to support their claim. This shift takes the focus off you as the one under scrutiny and puts the spotlight back on the person making the statement, requiring them to defend their own position. The person who controls the frame controls the tone, the pace, and ultimately the level of influence in the exchange. And this is where you can either let the discussion be about their opinion of you or make it about the truth itself. Confidence is quiet because it doesn't need to fill every gap with words to prove its presence. When someone is truly certain about who they are and what they've done, they don't feel the urgency to explain, persuade, or convince others to see things the same way. That lack of urgency communicates more strength than any defensive speech could. People instinctively trust a steady, measured tone because it suggests you're not rattled by outside opinions, and that composure can be more persuasive than the most elaborate argument. Loud explanations, on the other hand, often signal a need for validation, and the moment people sense you're seeking their approval, the dynamic shifts in their favor. Quiet confidence allows your actions, your track record, and your consistency to do the speaking for you. It shows that you're anchored in your own reality, unshaken by the need to win every disagreement. In this way, your calm becomes a silent challenge, making others question why you're so unbothered, and often causing them to reassess whether their accusation even holds weight in the first place. Pick Your Battles is about understanding that not every statement, opinion, or accusation deserves your time or emotional energy. The urge to respond to everything comes from a place of wanting to be understood or wanting to correct every misunderstanding, but that's a fast track to exhaustion and frustration. When you try to fight every single perception that doesn't align with the truth, you end up spreading yourself thin and giving credibility to things that may not have had any real weight to begin with. The more you engage with trivial or baseless claims, the more oxygen you give them, and what might have been forgotten in hours can stretch into days because you kept it alive with your reaction. By choosing carefully which situations are worth addressing, you're not only preserving your own peace, you're also sending a message that your attention is valuable and not available on demand. This restraint forces others to think twice before trying to pull you into unnecessary conflict because they realize you won't automatically give them the satisfaction of a response just because they made noise. Picking your battles isn't about ignoring everything. It's about investing your voice where it can actually make a difference and letting the rest pass without becoming another distraction that pulls you away from your bigger goals. Reputation builds defense because over time the consistent pattern of your actions creates a track record that speaks for you in ways no quick explanation ever could. When people have seen you operate with integrity, reliability, and honesty again and again, their default reaction to an accusation is to measure it against everything they already know about you. A single claim, especially one without substance, struggles to hold weight against years of demonstrated character. This is why the most effective form of self-protection isn't in the heat of the moment when someone questions you, but in the daily choices you make long before that moment ever arrives. Each decision, each interaction, each follow-through quietly stacks evidence in your favor, building a silent case that others will recall when your name comes up. A solid reputation creates a kind of shield that works even when you're not in the room, because people who trust your record are often quick to defend you on your behalf. This is the opposite of scrambling to justify yourself under pressure. Instead, it's the result of letting your behavior over time establish a credibility that can't be undone by a single opinion or a passing wave of doubt. When you stop defending yourself, you stop giving away your power. You learn to trust the truth, trust your record, and trust the fact that not every voice deserves a reply. Defensiveness invites doubt, but calm clarity invites respect. You control the frame, you choose your battles, and you let silence speak when words would only fuel the fire. Over time, your consistency becomes your strongest argument, one that needs no rush, no urgency, and no pleading. The less you defend, the more you define yourself on your own terms.